Welcome to Pioche, a small Nevada town with a larger-than-life history. Nestled in Lincoln County, approximately 180 miles northeast of Las Vegas, Pioche is a place where the riches of the earth collided with the lawlessness of the Wild West. Today, we're digging into the town's mining legacy, its deadly reputation, and lasting imprint on Nevada's history. The story of Pioche starts back in 1863, when a group of Paiutes led famous scout, prospector, expert rifleman, and missionary William Hamblin to a ledge of silver ore, later named the Panacker Ledge, in exchange for food and clothing. Once Hamblin's rich ore samples made their way back to Salt Lake City, an expedition soon returned in April of 1864 and organized the new Meadow Valley Mining District. Between 1864 to the early part of 1868, there was very little work done in the area. This was partially due to its extreme remoteness and the time it took to get heavy mining equipment shipped from San Francisco by way of Cape Horn. That all changed around the spring of 1868. San Francisco financier Francois Pioche sent his associate Charles Hoffman out to purchase most of the area's mining claims, which would soon be incorporated into the new Meadow Valley Mining Company. Word spread quickly, and by 1869, a town was officially plotted out bearing Francois' namesake, and a mining rush was underway. Around the same time, John H. Ely and William H. Raymond arrived in camp and ended up becoming owners of a very rich claim. The men soon decided to haul up an old 5-stamp mill they were previously using from a dried-up claim in Hyco. On a sloping hillside outside Pioche that would later become known as Bullionville, the men had their 5-stamp mill reassembled next to a water source that would process all the new rich ore. With all the pieces in place, Pioche boomed big. Within 3 short years, it had attracted over 6,000 residents and had taken the Lincoln County seat from nearby Hyco, creating the need for a new infamous courthouse that we'll discuss in a minute. By 1872, the Pioche mines had already hauled out over $5 million worth of rich silver ore, with no signs of stopping. The mines of Pioche were the lifeblood of the town. The most prominent ended up being the Raymond and Ely, which between 1870 and 1875 is said to have produced over $20 million worth of silver, an astonishing figure for the time. Other top producers were the original Meadow Valley mines and later Treasure Hill, which would become the benefactor of a new aerial tram that still stands to this day. In 1890, the Raymond and Ely, Meadow Valley, and Yuba mines were all merged by William S. Godbey into the Pioche Consolidated Mining and Reduction Company. The following year, he built a large new mill below town, with the Pioche Pacific Railway connecting it to the Pioche mines. After processing ore at this mill for over 30 years, a newer mill was built above town in 1929, and the lower mill was reconfigured to be a 250-ton flotation concentrator. An accidental fire occurred shortly after the reconfiguration, but the Godbey mill was soon rebuilt with a new aerial tramway alongside it to connect to the mines at the top of Treasure Hill. This tramway operated throughout the 1930s, carrying ore from the hilltop mines down over Boot Hill Cemetery to Godbey Mill in the valley. To this day, you can walk almost the entire length of the tramway and observe ore buckets still hanging from the cables, as if the miners just ended their shift. The tramway was almost entirely gravity-powered, using only the aid of a small 5-horsepower motor. The ore would be loaded into buckets at the top of the tram, then sent down towards the mill, providing the energy to return empty buckets back up to the bin. The bin itself is quite an impressive piece of engineering, as it sits here mostly intact, with the giant cast flywheel still in place. And over the hill, the impressive Godbey mill that it served still stands sentry over the landscape today, shadowing Pioche in its own past. In 1928, the cost of delivering ore to the mill via the tramway was estimated to be only 6 cents per ton. And though Pioche primarily produced rich silver ore, there was plenty of lead, copper, zinc, and even some gold extracted too. The mines were productive well into the early 20th century, but throughout the 1920s, the easily accessible ore had mostly been depleted. Mining operations continued sporadically, including lead and zinc production to support World War II, but by the 1950s, most of the major mines had been shut down. Total mineral production during Pioche's boom is estimated to exceed some $130 million. But unlike the silver it produced, Pioche also had a not-so-shiny side. Due to its remote location and seemingly endless pay dirt there for the taking, the town also gained a reputation for deadly lawlessness. During the late 19th century, Pioche was one of the most violent towns in the entire West. It is said that of the town's first 72 deaths, none were due to natural causes, but rather all due to violence. A section of the local cemetery, ominously known as Boot Hill, is the final resting place for many of those souls. The term Boot Hill signified the idea that men were being shot and buried so abruptly that their boots were still on. You can see in this old photo how rudimentary the plots were, just barely dug out below the tramway here before wooden markers were later used. While the good and proper folk were laid to rest together in the next plot, Boot Hill was specifically dedicated to house outlaws, vagrants, and their victims, which there was no shortage of. In 1871 to 1872, around 60% of the reported murders in all of Nevada were from Pioche. The town's Wild West reputation even extended into the legal system itself. Construction of the new county courthouse and jail was so overcome with political corruption, kickbacks, missed payments, and ballooning interest that costs skyrocketed from the original $26,000 budget to $1 million. It would take intervention from the Nevada State Legislature and a total of 65 years for the building to be paid off in full, only after the structure itself was condemned. If we can say they did one thing right, however, it's definitely the construction of the jail. With its 16-inch walls, it holds the reputation of never being broken out of. And yes, this is sort of rare for a Wild West prison. Today, the building is rightfully named the $1 Million Courthouse and was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1976. If you visit during operating hours, you can even go inside the courtroom and see a mock trial set up. Just be careful now that you know the town's reputation. I wouldn't be taking anyone for a dummy in here. Right outside, next to the $1 Million Courthouse, is another interesting historic building, the old Mountain View Hotel. The Mountain View was built in 1895 by the Ely Valley Mines Company in order to house guests and dignitaries that were in town for business. It offered a wonderful view down into the valley from the upper-level porches. Herbert Hoover, 31st President of the United States, was even said to lodge here in 1930, along with other U.S. senators and Nevada governors. In the modern day, the Mountain View has been shuttered for quite some time and is in need of repairs. We hope to someday see the inside of this wonderful building before it is reclaimed by the high desert winters or suffers a different fate. Back down on Main Street, many figures of the Old West passed through Pioche during its heyday. It is rumored that Doc Holliday even briefly lived in Pioche before heading off to Tombstone, Arizona, and that famous gunslingers like him and Butch Cassidy frequented the local Alamo Club during those years. With its booming population, Pioche had no shortage of watering holes and places to lay down a bet. Like many Wild West towns, its success was often measured by the amenities it provided in such a remote and hostile place. Along with a population of 6,000, Pioche maintained 72 saloons, 3 hurdy-gurdy dance halls, 32 brothels, 2 theaters, 2 breweries, 2 gravity-fed water systems with street mains and fire plugs, 2 fire companies, and a livery stable maintaining 300 horses. This was no shanty mining town by any standards. Today, Pioche is a much quieter place. Gone are the gunfights and the frantic rush for silver. The population hovers around 1,000 residents, which is a far cry from the town's boom days. We only covered a tiny fraction of the historical locations that remain in Pioche today because we know the best adventure is discovering them yourself. That's why we also recommend stopping by the Lincoln County Museum in Pioche, where you can get some great information on the area before heading out to explore. Although the mines have long since closed, Pioche has not been forgotten. It stands as a living testament to the rough and tumble days of silver mining and the people who sought their fortunes in these remote hills. Whether you're a history buff, a ghost town enthusiast, or simply passing through, Pioche offers a glimpse into the past and a story that will always be worth telling. This is Pioche, where the ground was rich, the streets were deadly, and the history lives on.